Oh, hey there. Nice to meet you. Shall we get into it? Hi there, I'm Kevin, a branding and identity designer and author of this book, Brand Principles: How to Be a 21st Century Brand. Among other things, it presents 15 principles to help you better understand what's involved in building a brand. You could say that it's taken me 30 years to write it. And this video will be valuable for business owners, for those of you beginning a startup, or someone exploring the world of brand. Maybe even working towards becoming a designer themselves one day. To begin with, there's a question I like to ask business leaders when I start working with them, and I want to ask you the same question. Is your business a brand? Now don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to put your answers in the comments, but I do want you to think about your answer before we move on. Now that might sound like a simple question, but it's one I like to ask to set the scene for how I believe we should be talking and thinking about brand. Okay, got your answer? Good. Keep it in the back of your mind and we'll return to this question later in the video. But first, let's dispel a few common beliefs. Your brand is not your logo. The reality is, your brand gives the logo its value. And what does that mean? Well, your logo is the quick shorthand visual reminder of all the individual associations, experiences, and perceptions people have with your brand. It helps provide meaning, recognition, understanding, and can help foster trust. But it's just that, a visual mark that people can quickly associate with your business on multiple levels. Essentially, your logo is the assist. In other words, a brand is who you are and how you behave. Logos, branding, are how you look and how you're recognized. Now, I'm not belittling identity, branding, and logos. It's quite the opposite, actually. Your logo and communications material are a window to your brand, which makes them incredibly important. It's how customers begin to understand who you truly are, what your values are, and whether these messages align with their own personal values and expectations. This makes logos incredibly powerful because you can send a whole bundle of messages instantaneously through one simple visual mark. Don't believe me? Here's an example that I use in my book, and it involves pirates. Yes, I'm talking about Jack Sparrow, Captain Hook, and Blackbeard. So if we're talking about pirates, what icon or symbol immediately pops into your head? Was it this one? The skull and crossbones, or the Jolly Roger, is the perfect example of how a logo can embed a lot of complex information in one simple mark. But the Jolly Roger didn't do this on its own. Instead, it was a powerful canvas for meaning, allowing various associations to be embedded within it over time. In fact, pirates were surprisingly business-minded and the unsung heroes of marketing, communications, and branding. Bet you never thought about pirates that way before. Now, the Jolly Roger struck fear into any ship that saw it, but not because of the visual of a skull and two bones. It was because of the perceived meaning behind the symbol, of how people assumed pirates to act and behave, of what they could expect to happen next. In other words, pirates used incredibly clear, effective branding. The Jolly Roger conveyed very specific messages which were built upon a specifically cultivated reputation, as well as perceptions, stories, and narratives which pirates deliberately promoted. And through the Jolly Roger, this is how people interpreted pirates and collectively assimilated the pirate brand into popular culture, striking fear into the hearts of many. It also highlights an important principle in branding. Your brand is not just what you say it is, it's what other people say it is. Or, to put it another way, in a quote often attributed to Jeff Bezos from Amazon, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So really, your job as a business leader is managing the gap between what you say you are and what your customers say you are. Because if you aren't clear about this, how do you expect other people to be clear about it, including your customers? In fact, a brand takes time to build. It takes context, it takes awareness, and it takes constant evolution. It takes action, not just intention. And it's not a brand at inception, it's a business. Now, a business becomes a brand when enough customers clearly understand your relevance in their lives, when they see you as a benchmark in the sector, or when they willingly align your business with their personal identity. But it's a two-way street. In return, the business needs to continually add tangible value to the customers' lives through specific products, services, and experiences, etc. In short, your brand is a long-term objective. Now, that might sound like a long, hard journey, but there are ways to start off strong and then to continue checking in with your progress. With that in mind, I developed 6 questions that can help businesses get clarity and adopt or maintain a brand mindset. But they are deceptively difficult questions. So, make sure you have a pen and paper and answer them as honestly as you can. You also need to answer the questions in sequence, and now it'll become clear later on in the video. I use these questions regularly when working with businesses, and I've been told they are the simplest, hardest, yet most valuable questions to answer. Ready? Question 1. What value do you provide? Now, I'm not talking about value for money, but rather, how do you deliver value? In business language, you could call this your value proposition, but make sure you're thinking benefits, not features, because features can be easily replicated, whereas benefits are based on deeper, sometimes intangible value. For example, how do you help your customers solve their problem or need? How do you improve their experience, or maybe even improve their life? The value should show why you are relevant in their lives and ultimately why they would choose you over others. Question 2. Who are you talking to? How do you describe your customer or audience? Now, don't think about demographics like age groups, customer segments, or how much money they earn. Instead, consider what kind of person they are. Are they progressive, early adopters, or conservatives looking for reassurance? Are they purpose-driven, environmentally conscious, or time-poor and craving convenience? Most importantly, are they struggling with a particular problem? And if so, what is it? Question 3. What are you saying? Now that you know who you're talking to, and this is why it's important to write your answers down in sequence, what are you actually saying to them? So what's your core message? What do you want them to know and remember? See if you can write it down in short sentences. Once you have it down, question it. So is it informative, or is it a call to action where you're asking them to do something? Either way, it's critical that you're clear about what you're communicating. Okay, we're halfway there. Nice job. Now, there are 3 more questions to go, but I hope you're already thinking more deeply about your business than you have been previously, and possibly more deeply than most business owners often do. Now, these next 3 questions build off what you've already answered. Question 4. What channels are you using? Now, if you're clear on the first 3 questions, which are your value, who you're talking to, and what you're saying to them, the next obvious question is, how are you reaching them? And is that how they want to be reached? For example, do they prefer one-on-one interactions? Do they prefer digital-only experiences? Or maybe community events are more their thing? Regardless, how are you contacting them? Question 5, and this is a big one. Can you live up to it? Now, so far the questions have been pretty straightforward with little to no ego involved, but this one is different because most people's initial reaction will be, yes, of course we can live up to what we say we do. That's why we do what we do. But where's the proof? Or rather, what proof will your customers expect to see in order to judge whether you are living up to it? Now, the last question is the hardest question of all, but don't give up, you're nearly there. Question 6. Why should anybody care? Now, from what I've seen, most businesses have an instinct to respond from their point of view, not their customers. It's completely natural to try and support your belief that what you do is relevant and important. So, I normally ask the sub-question: would anybody care or miss your business if it abruptly shut down tomorrow? In other words, do you matter? Now that's pretty heavy, isn't it? But it needs to be asked. But here's the thing. The answer to question 6 is actually the response to question 1. Why? Because as we know, for the most part, customers and audiences are always asking, what's in it for me? They're always seeing it from their point of view, not yours. This makes question 1 critical, because if you're not delivering value, it's unlikely you matter all that much to your customers. And therefore, it's unlikely you'd be missed if you disappeared tomorrow. Your customers would just find a competitor who would fill your shoes. Harsh, but true. When I do these questions with the businesses that I work with, I suggest they run through the questions a few times before we get question 1 and question 6 to line up neatly. Of course, the rest of the questions are vitally important because they validate the alignment between question 1 and question 6. I often suggest doing this in a group setting where stakeholders and staff are involved. Have everyone answer the questions individually before sharing their results and comparing them to others. It's guaranteed to achieve clarity and alignment internally, or highlight gaps or misunderstandings which can then be addressed. But, and there's always a but, this is still based on assumptions. The next step is to share your views with customers to see if they agree. From there, you will have a pretty succinct reference for how your business operates, the value it provides, for whom, supported by a clear message, delivered through appropriate channels, backed by actual proof, and then underpinned by a product, service, or experience that is genuinely relevant in people's lives. With this, you'll have something that is easy for anyone to communicate, because it will also be easier to remember. Now, in my book, I go into a few examples, but I promise if you can answer these questions, you'll be well on your way to having clarity around communicating your value and your relevance, which are building blocks for a sustainable and valued brand with the ability to attract loyal customers and staff. So, I'll ask you again, is your business a brand? Has your viewpoint changed from the start of this video? Now this time, I'd love to see your answers in the comments. Let me know if your perspective has changed, and if so, why. I really hope these 6 questions are as effective for you as they have been for the many businesses that I've shared them with. Because the thing is, not all businesses are brands. In fact, most aren't, and that's okay. This video is about implementing a brand mindset, offering a quick insight into why this matters in the 21st century. With the right mindset, your actions are more powerful and more important, because action speaks louder than intention. Action will help design a better future. Action is within everyone's reach. Action will usher in new solutions. The future is in your hands. Are you with us? Oh, hey, you're still here. Well, if you want to know more about the brand principles, check out my website at thesumof.com.au. I'll put it in the description. And if you want more videos on how to use Canva to create clear communication for your business, check out one of these videos or subscribe to this channel. Thanks so much for watching.